Okay, well, let's get started if that's okay. We'll call our meeting to order. Appreciate your attendance here. We'll first have an invocation by Councilmember Wright and a pledge by Councilmember Smith.
Our dear kind Heavenly Father, we're grateful for this day and grateful for the many blessings that Thou hast given us. We're grateful that we can be gathered to get today as Springville residents to talk about our city and the betterment of it. And we pray that Thy Spirit will be with us, that we might be able to make good decisions. And we ask for all of these things in the name of Thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Will the audience please arise?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Okay. Council's had a meeting agenda presented to them. I need either an adoption to approve the meeting as presented or any deletions or additions.
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting's agenda as presented.
I'll second it.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed. Okay, we'd like to thank you all for being here. We appreciate your attendance here. If there's anybody here for scouts or students or whatever, you guys here for students, excellent. You can come up and sit with us if you want to. Would that like freak you right out? No? There's a lot of candy up here. That's usually when they're a little younger, they definitely come up and they don't even care what we're doing. They just eat a lot of candy. So anyway, we welcome you here. Is it a class that you've got going on in the high school or junior high? Is that correct? Wonderful. We're glad that you're here. If you have comments that you'd like to make, we invite you to fill out a form, and Kim has those outside. If you'd fill that out and bring that up to Kim, we'll get that on the record. Okay, very good. Well, let's go to the ceremonial part. Patrick, if you'd like to.
Mayor and Council, it's a pleasure to be with you this evening. We'd like to recognize some outstanding citizens who have given some service to the city this evening and have since, I don't know if we call it been released or excused of their duties, as they've now taken on some other responsibilities in their lives. But first thing we'd like to do is have Kim and Craig Bingham come up. Craig looks worse than he is, so he can make the journey. That was a little accident down in California while they were vacationing. But so Kim and Craig joined us 4.5 years ago to run our city youth council, and Kim and Craig have literally taken that council and created something that it has never been before, and just creating programs and purpose behind the council, more than just a service opportunity, but an opportunity for these kids to learn more about city government, and have participated monthly in training meetings and a lot of other opportunities that has been provided for these kids. And so we thank them for their service since they have finished their term, and a little extra. Kim and Craig are good friends, and when I called them to help us out, I didn't give them a time, and I think that 4.5 years was very generous of them. But we have these appreciations for you.
Yep.
Picture with them. So if you two just want to turn around and face me and picture.
Make sure you get Craig's brace in
What
there.
happens after 4.5 years of
Put Matt in the middle. Oh, I'll put Kim in the middle. Even better. Yeah, there you go.
Mayor, if you'll stay with us for just a moment. Okay.
So I've known the Binghams for quite some time, and they're very fond neighbors of mine. And we just express appreciation to them for all their hours that they've put into this youth council, and it's been wonderful. And when I've come, I've been just so pleasantly surprised with the number of youth that you've had involved in it. It's just been a great representation of the youth that we have here in the city, and you've just brought out the best in them. So thank you very much. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, you guys.
Okay, so Mayor, while you're still down here, if we could have Eric Graves come on up and his wife. Well, you might as well join him. Come on. She hates this? Okay, well, you're welcome to say, he told me you hate this. So come on up. So Eric has served with us on our planning commission and has recently been asked to participate in some other activities that's called him away from that. And so we'd like to give Eric a huge round of applause for his time and helping us with the planning commission and help shape our community. And we thank him for that. So Mayor, if you would like to give him that award, we'll give him a hand of applause. If you'll look here as well.
Thanks, Eric.
Okay, thank you so much.
So, Patrick, do we have a replacement for any of them? Not yet, do we? Nothing for the Binghams either? Oh, they have? Oh, really?
Oh, cool.
No.
So before you leave, Graves, there's only two ways out of the position that you're in. Well, three. You finish your term, you die, or you go on a mission. So they're headed to Detroit to represent the church there with the young men and young women there. So we just wish you the very best, and thank you so much for your service. We appreciate it and the experience that you're going to have. And if you're afraid of public, you're going to get a lot of it here in the next 3 years. Can't hide in the shadows. So thank you again so very much. Appreciate it. All righty. Well, let's have our public comment. Paul Pryor, you're here. Okay, if you've given us all some paper here to review with you, so we'll give you 4 minutes. Would that be okay?
That'll be fine. And
Okay.
just raise your hand when you're done. I'll say thank you and sit down.
You want me to raise my hand?
That would be fine.
Okay.
Whatever.
All right. Here we go.
Hey, I'm first. I'll hit the big points, and then if I have time, I'll do some detail. First of all, this might be my last swan song or swan dive, depending whether you like music or sports. Okay. I'm 78. I've been a resident since July 1st, 1970. Beautiful city. Thank you very much, and your ancestors. My ancestors, August Pryor, 1809, went to Spanish Fork. August Swenson, 1836, went to Spanish Fork. So we're sister communities. We've been cousins all along, and I enjoyed the area. I was born and raised in Denver, but I felt a draw to come back here. Again, thank you very much. Secondly, in the map, and I have extras and I'll wait here on the back, on the front page, you'll see we own about 34 acres on South Main. It's time, I respectfully say, to put us on the map, okay? With the parkway coming through, I think the official name is Dry Creek Parkway, is that correct?
I believe so.
That is good. I suggested the Tri-City Parkway, but then wonder what Tri-Cities were there. But that's beautiful. If you'll see this map, I propose, my first thing is the city needs a state-of-the-art outdoor recreation park as good or better than Spanish Forks. And I propose this location north of the parkway when it's extended, and between South Main and SR 51. There's about 26 acres there, and you can have a duplicate Bartholomew Pond between 1 and 3 to 4 acres. A good swimmable, pure stream water there. So mention that to your recreation thing. I am selling land as I can. I don't want to sell it all in one whack, or the feds will get a half of it, okay? But this is for sale. The next thing, when that parkway comes through, plead with the powers that be that they go to the original site of 4th East and US 28. That'll be on the second page map. That's the best suggestion, because you'll draw Springville, East Springville residents east of that 4th East barrier. They will not go up that slippery, icy hill. It's negative to nature to go up and away from where you want to go. So you plead for that eventual underpass, over of 89, under of the parkway with on-off ramps. That will really beautify the area. And again, it doesn't need to be done in weeks or days, but put on your now glasses and your horizon glasses. This might be 20, 30, 40, 50 years down the road, but plan for future populations growth. Incidentally, if you haven't heard Governor Cox State of the State, his theme was build and get ready for it, but be wise and build beautifully. And so I would encourage that theme. The next thing, call this pond the Crandall Minor Prior Memorial Lake and Recreation Area. That'll honor the pioneers, and that'd be a beautiful thing. Crandall will want the most money, and he'll probably get it, but I'm selling pretty reasonable right now. I know New Sink would sell, and there's a peat bog under there. You mitigate the peat bog, mix it with your waste, fill it up. It'll take 20 years to fill up, but you'll have prime industrial or land between those two areas. You already have the city pump house down there, so you'll just be your own neighbor, okay? Next on the agenda.
You've been 4 minutes. Let's go
I'm
another
done.
minute and then we'll be done.
I thank you. Appreciate it.
No, go ahead another minute. That's okay. You can do a conclusion. Go for it.
And one more minute?
Yep, go for it.
Okay, I'll get in court. Next, all right, you're done. Finally, when the railroad joins, the railroad says they won't put a penny in it. But eventually they'll see the wisdom of feds, local, state monies, merging those railroad tracks together into one main line. Yes, please support that. That'll open the landlocked areas between the tracks, of which we're part of it. And again, it can be part of the beautiful development that'll help this community. I think I'm almost done. Okay. That's it.
Very good. Excellent.
Thank
Excellent.
you, guys.
We appreciate it.
Okay. And if anyone wants one, can I pass these around
You bet.
after?
Yep, you betcha.
I'll just let people pass them. And yes, if you could do that, you've got better legs than I do.
And Mr. Pryor, they all have theirs in their box, so they already have, the
They
council
have
has a
theirs
copy.
in their box,
Yep.
and
Yep.
you'll be getting a thank you letter with the resume of what I mentioned tonight.
Very good. Well,
Thanks
thank you very
again.
much. And to your point, that discussion of consolidating the railroad is a hot topic of conversation right now. So, yes, very good. Mr. Pryor, thank you for coming. We're very grateful for you being here. Okay, we have the consent agenda. We have a resolution on the consent agenda, and then some approval of some minutes. Any questions in relationship to the consent agenda?
I'll motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, it's a roll call vote because there is an ordinance on there. Mike?
Yes.
Craig?
Yes.
Mindy?
Yes.
Jake?
Yes.
Logan?
Yes.
Okay, Josh, you have S&K annexation.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a very simple item but never simple. Whenever we have an annexation, it always is somewhat complicated. But I just want to quickly pull up the map and just show you the location of this property. This is just right in the mayor's neighborhood. There is, as you can see on this map, hopefully, it's this blue line here represents the municipal boundary. These white lines represent the property boundary. In this case and in some additional cases moving eastward, this Mapleton-Springville boundary is a little messy. And here we have an instance where the municipal boundary is not contiguous with the parcel boundary. So in order to accomplish the subdivision that is proposed here, all of the property within the subdivision needed to be within Springville. So the applicant has gone through the process of creating an annexation plat. You previously accepted that, and it has gone through all of the statutory processes to come to you for your final consideration. And Kim Crane, our recorder, has been really point on this and has managed this and other annexations, and has really been an incredible asset to all of us as we go through these processes that we don't do a lot but require very particular attention. So all that you're voting on tonight is simply to accept this annexation plat, which would align this city boundary with this parcel boundary, bringing this little chunk into Springville with the rest of the parcel to which it's attached.
So is that Mapleton?
This
Or is it
chunk
county?
is unincorporated county.
Okay.
The Mapleton city boundary is down here.
Okay, I was just wondering.
So no, we're not, it's not a,
Sort of
mun-
Mapleton
Had an
to do the
issue
same
with
thing.
no, it's not a municipal boundary adjustment. That is a county island.
Okay.
Otherwise, it would require action by both
Yeah.
bodies.
Okay, questions for Josh? Okay, hearing no questions, I'll entertain a motion for,
Public hearing, don't we? Do we have
Oh.
a public hearing on this one?
yep,
Yeah, we do.
we do. Okay, we need to open up for a public hearing for anyone who'd like to address for or against this.
Be it, there's no clamoring at the desk here. I motion that we close the public hearing.
I'll second that.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, now I am open for a motion, sorry.
I motion that we approve ordinance number 03-2025 that approves the SNK annexation regarding approximately 8,548 square feet or 0.196 acres located at approximately 1520 East, 1200 South, Springville, Utah County as an R110 zone.
Thank you, Logan. I have a second.
I'll second.
Okay, it's a roll call vote. Jake?
Yes.
Craig?
Yes.
Mike? Logan?
Yes.
Mindy? Very good. Okay, we're looking for Josh. I think you're still up.
Thank you so much. We're back to take action potentially on the proposed amendments to Lakeside Landing. As we discussed previously, we've been at this Lakeside Landing thing for quite a while and have, after its first adoption in 2021, we've had kind of a regular cadence of amendments since that time. And this is the latest. To briefly review, Lakeside Landing entitles about 160, now closer to 200 acres, originally 2,000 units with a bunch of parks and open space, commercial, and provides us really a framework to the west side of the town, or our west city boundary. And it does that through a code that's different than the codes that we've generally had in the city. It focuses more on the built form of development and provides a lot of explanatory language in the code to essentially provide context and guidance to the implementation. It's a form-based code, so it is a code and a plan all in one, and regulates the location of all of the streets, all of these subzones called transects, all of the open space, all of those elements, so that we have surety as to what the developed result will be. As I mentioned, it regulates the location of all of the features on the map. It has lots of standards in terms of architectural standards, landscape standards, standards for streets, parking lots, and really all of the elements that constitute a development. The great thing about form-based code is it doesn't just regulate the private property, it regulates the public realm as well, so we actually finish the job in terms of planning for what we want. Unified Business Alliance, parent company from Davies Design Build, who was kind of the entity or the name that we originally started with, owns what we call the southern part of the plan, and they are proposing an amendment to enable them to change that southern part to be more primarily single-family detached and attached from the previous or the currently adopted plan, which is a more intense transect zone called T6, which permits higher density, more stacked types of units, and importantly does not permit some of the lower scale, lower intensity detached and attached units that UBA would now like to be able to utilize in this area. So in short, it adjusts the permitted lot types. Our options were, to adjust either what lot types were allowed in T6 and kind of make it like the rest of the zones, or change the transect that was on the map. And so our recommendation of staff was to actually change the transect on the map so that we retained a T6 that had some real differentiation between the other transects. The amendment has resulted in reconfiguring blocks on the regulating plan to provide for the system of alleys and block sizes that are conducive to the forms of buildings that are being proposed. We've increased the green space. As I mentioned previously, none of this additional landscape area comes to the city, either through dedication or in terms of our maintenance responsibility. In response to your question from, some questions from last week, this is just all rolled up the shifts in terms of what we could get out of the development. In the current plan, the maximum number of residential units is 515 in the southern portion, with a minimum commercial square footage of 69,000. The proposed plan has a maximum residential unit yield of 336 and a minimum commercial square footage of close to 40,000, representing a 35% decrease in residential units and a 43% decrease in commercial square footage. And again, residential units is a maximum and commercial square footage is a minimum. These are graphics comparing the illustrative plan between the two. Importantly, neither of these plans are regulatory, but show how that the proposed regulating plan or the adopted regulating plan, in the case of the map on the left, could be developed. On the regulating plan, all of the locations of streets, parks, alleys, greens, all of those are controlled and established by the regulating plan. But exactly the shape of the buildings and the configuration of the parking lots and exactly what lot types would be allocated to what lots, kind of the final platting stuff, that is still flexible within the constraints provided by the regulating plan. To the specifics of the amendment, this first element, after some multiple conversations with Corkett Onaran, the consultant planner that helped develop this code originally, he had a concern, and I eventually better understood his concern, that the inclusion of a requirement to have 6 of these lot types be residential and 4 mixed use was problematic. One, because if you look at the lot types, nowhere on any of the lot types 1 through 30 does it say if it's a commercial or a residential lot type. The uses are controlled by the transect. So really you could put any of the permitted uses in any of the permitted lot types. And to make this really work, we would have had to go and define which lot types were residential and which were mixed use, which would then create difficulty in saying, well, I can't use any more of those types because those are the ones that are residential, even though any lot can be put to any use, any building type can be put to any use permitted in the zone. And importantly, to this point, it's less, this doesn't change the minimum amount of commercial square footage that has to be provided in the development. So after seeing the complications this would cause in the code and seeing that it really didn't offer any more improvement to the potential outcome or advantage to the city or the developer, I think this part of the proposal, this proposed provision should be struck, and I have a revised copy of that page 19 with that that second half of the sentence removed. The minimum amount of commercial space, as was shown on the table, would be about 40,000 square feet. No single lot type may exceed 40% of total lots. The compact townhouse, when it's used in the southern area, can only be 2 stories or 35 feet max. And the compact urban townhouse must have a third floor with a third floor area of at least 500 square feet so that we get some differentiation between those lot types and some diversity in the offerings here, or in the segmentation perhaps. Also, a minimum of 20% of all the residential units in the southern part shall have a total building floor area that's defined in the code, 1,400 square feet or less. And then an additional lot type has been proposed by UBA, lot type 30, Main Street walk-ups over shops, which essentially allows us to create really the traditional Main Street mixed-use building like the Pier 49 Pizza or the Browns Art Gallery, those kind of narrow 2-story or 3-story commercial buildings. They've also proposed some additional architectural standards and guidelines, and we've requested, and Planning Commission recommended, that we fill in the bullet or make required some additional standards in there that were originally put forward as recommendations or guidelines. And then staff has proposed the addition of elevation variety standards to the other transects beyond the T3 transect where those standards originated, so that when we have the same type of lot type mix in the higher transects as we do in the T3 transect, that we will have the same degree of diversity. There has been one change to that since it was reviewed by the Planning Commission, and that is exempting the compact townhome from the requirement that it can't have a similar elevation across the street, but all of the other subject lot types 4 through 15 will be required to not repeat the same elevation next door on either side or directly across the street or on the either side of that. So it's actually 6 elevations.
So what's the thought process on that?
And we discussed this a little bit last time, that the thought process is that introducing in a townhome building in a code where the code requires each unit of those townhomes to be, or for the townhome itself to be a singular composition and not a just repetition of the same unit, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the same townhomes glued together, that you already have a building that's very diverse in composition, and if you require a different elevation across the street, that it can introduce unneeded and undesirable clutter, visual clutter into the neighborhood that you don't get when you're dealing with just one single-family detached or duplex type elevation. but it would still require that diversity on the lots adjacent on the same side of the street. There is, in the packet you received, the application of these elevation variety standards has changed just slightly, as I realized that the way that I had written the proposed amendments didn't actually accomplish what we intended to accomplish and what the consultant and what the applicant thought we were accomplishing. I had inserted this language directly below the block face diversity within T5I transect, forgetting that it would then not apply to T4, T5, and T6. So what we've done is just created a separate D section that indicates that that block face diversity requirement will apply to all transects. And now that I'm looking at it with you, it should really read T4, T5, T5I, and T6. I hate coming to a meeting and catching something, but we're already in A describing the block face diversity requirements within the T3 transect, so we don't want to create conflicts. So that, I'm going to need to make that tweak before you take action on this on that page.
So Josh, did you send out this to us?
Yes.
Yeah.
I guess
there were
I missed it.
There were several documents he sent.
I missed it. Okay, good. Well, I'm lacking knowing this, so that's
The verbiage hasn't changed aside from the exemption of lot type 15 from subsection B of the across the street requirement. Really the only thing that changed is I made it a separate section so we could make it apply properly. Other than that,
and you talked about this except for B, correct?
correct.
Okay.
Well, A and B were combined previously as the Planning Commission saw it and applying to 4 through 15. But after, again, some more conversation with Corkut and reflection, it made sense to exempt 15, which is that compact townhome, from the across the street requirement.
Okay.
So all of these provisions, minus the couple little tweaks, were reviewed and recommended unanimously by the Planning Commission. They really resulted from an extended period of collaboration with the applicant, with Corkut from Polona, with Troy, really helping to facilitate that. And we all feel that we've come to a place where we can recommend the adoption of this. There's obviously, it's a big decision, and there is always lingering concern and anxiety that we get it right. But considering the options that were in front of us and the desire from UBA to be able to reduce the density in that area, we feel like this is a good outcome and recommend that you approve it.
Okay, questions for Josh?
I don't have any questions, but Josh, if you could explain to the public briefly why UBA is requesting this amendment?
Well, I can only...
They don't have the advantage of being in work sessions and seeing all the documents that we get to see and
Right.
things like
I
that.
can
So-
only speak to that as far as I'm privy to that why, but as it's been communicated to me in conversation and in previous meetings, UBA first is in a market that is substantially challenged in terms of financing and absorbing multifamily product. And so the near-term potential for moving that type of product or moving this project ahead, the southern part with that type of product, is minimal. Changing to a changing the code such that it permits more single-family attached and detached provides lots to the market that there's a big demand for right now, and that there is both interest in from a consumer standpoint and interest from home builders. That's something that kind of large, well-capitalized home builders are interested in acquiring in bulk and constructing. There's other elements that have been raised in terms of it results in a reduction potentially in trip generation and an overall kind of vehicle population in the area, changes the profile of occupants, perhaps increases the stability and the buying power of the average resident from what could have been developed in the previous plan. But I look at those more as potentially positive outcomes less than the underlying reason, and really from my perspective, the underlying reason is evolution in the marketplace and a desire to be able to provide a product that's marketable today and that can accommodate the state's desire to increase opportunities for ownership.
And the Planning Commission has vetted this, and they were all in agreement?
The vote was unanimous from the Planning Commission.
With those, you were going to get together with them and work out some details, and you've
Yes,
done that.
and that none of that was substantive. That was just like
Right,
getting all
right.
of the images updated and getting over the virginitis that was kind of plaguing. But you have in front of you, aside from the one, the tweak I mentioned to that provision regarding the 10 lot types and that issue I just found in the heading of the architectural standards, the newest and best and current version of the code. And then if that's adopted, we'll go back and take off all the red lines and make it look like adopted code.
Other questions for Josh?
Yeah, you mentioned like trip generation and like diversity of the kind of people that would be living in this neighborhood, and I do worry a little bit about like that neighborhood should have kind of a gravitational center, so that in theory people could walk or bike somewhere to a corner store, so they wouldn't have to be driving all the way across the freeway and the multiple viaducts. I guess I'm not sure exactly what point I'm making. I'm just wondering what kind of discussion did the Planning Commission have regarding... I mean, actually, I guess I watched that meeting, I believe, but I don't know. I just worry about creating just a lot of townhomes without a little bit of a gravitational core, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a big concern for us, and there was a lot of pontificating in emails about how
There's
a place to be walkable needs places to go, and that walk needs to be actually useful. And if we have less commercial or other types of opportunities there, then there becomes less reasons to walk and less ability to serve your daily needs within a walk or a short bike ride, and then results in more necessity to get in your car and drive across the freeway. Mm-hmm. Importantly, this commercial square footage is a minimum and not a maximum. If the market dictates, there remains a substantial amount of land to be developed in this area, one within the existing already entitled Lakeside Landing, and in property to the north and to the west that has not really yet moved out of the agricultural zone. So it may be that, not that it may be, but there will continue to be opportunities for additional commercial development and responding to market demand there, especially as the commercial in the north end of Spanish Fork continues to grow wildly, and we get that 2600 West Street through to the 1400 North interchange. But yes, on face value, it is a worry that is this 43% decrease in required commercial, will it have a bad effect on the long-term viability and placeness of this neighborhood? Or would we have been in the position where we had, where we forced the market ahead of demand in that area, and we may be in the place where, as things phase, that the market demands more commercial and the development community responds to that.
And for me, I think I'm a little less worried about the number of commercial square feet and more worried about like just the number of rooftops that would support any businesses located out there. So that reduction from a maximum 500 to a maximum 300, that's I think the thing that worries me a little bit, especially, it's this lovely land out there by the lake. It's a great place to go and kind of feel like you're escaping from the city. And so too, if we're going to build there, it feels like I feel a little bit of pressure, and I'm sure the builders do too, in a way that we should maximize on this opportunity.
Absolutely.
Because it'll be a few decades before things maybe have a chance to reshape out there.
We hope that the way that this code is structured and that the neighborhood is arranged, that it will be able to evolve like a traditional downtown. You go to South Temple and a lot of those nice houses are no longer houses, they're businesses, or buildings evolve, demand changes. And hopefully that will happen here. Obviously, there's a lot of other considerations in terms of building code and all of those type of things. But this 180 unit reduction in residential represents a little less than 10% of the current entitled units out there. And so across the whole, it's not a huge drop to the number of units, especially since we already have additional pieces asking or interested in being added to Lakeside. But it does create a flatter project. If you kind of looked at intensity, if you looked at a 3D graph and used density as a bar coming off of the land, you'd see in the current plan a peak in the southern area and then a tapering off into the periphery of the area. Now that will be much more flat.
Right. Speaking to the point of the ability because it's a form-based code, in theory, homes could become corner stores could become homes. Do you feel like this code has enough tooth that would happen in reality? Like, are we future-proofing some of these buildings so they could be converted from residential to commercial and vice versa?
That's really a building code question, and the answer is that unless a building is originally built with the intent for a certain space to serve a commercial use, there will be some degree of pain or work and money that needs to be spent to make that transition, but it wouldn't be substantially different from what was done with the bike shop on 3rd North. That's an old bungalow that's now a business. So it's not something that market demand wouldn't overcome, because we look up and down the Wasatch Front and across Utah County where that's happened, but we're not necessarily guaranteeing that every building is built with a some type of vertical chase for a hood if somebody wanted to come and put in a restaurant, or somebody's going to have to come in and go through that effort to do that, but they wouldn't be held up by any land use regulations.
Right. Okay. Sorry to hog some time.
No, this is why we're here.
I think it's great. You've created something that our city doesn't have. We're working with development as well as consultants. I think it's awesome, and we're able to shift a little bit. So I appreciate what you and the Planning Commission have done. So I have no other questions. I'm great.
Jake, did you have one?
No, I'm just ready to make a motion.
Okay, I'm going to ask a question.
Before we make a motion, he just needs to write the changes.
Write those corrections
So,
in there.
So, Josh, I've talked with you about this a couple times. Help me understand we don't want what we've talked about and we see in other cities where you look down the road and they all look the same, and it's kind of monotonous. Help me understand how you know that's not going to happen. And my second question is, there are duplexes along 4th South.
Currently, you're
Well, no, in the plan that's proposed, those are changing from being commercial to duplexes or home dwellings.
no.
So everything along 4th South is commercial.
The plan doesn't tell us that. All the plan tells us is that is what transect is there, not whether it will be a duplex or a townhome or a corner store. All it tells us is that the transect that is applied there, any lot type that's permitted within that transect and meets the criteria we've established in terms of diversity and percentage of lot types, can be used there if it fits between the street and the alley. All the regulating plan tells us is where the transects are, where the streets are, where the alleys are. It doesn't tell us what unit will go on each parcel or even the size and dimension of each parcel.
Is it fair to think of a transect kind of like a menu, and the developer can pick and choose things from that menu for that zoned transect?
In some ways, yes. Each transect permits a range of lot types and a range of land uses. And any of those land uses are permitted in any of those lot types. And there are specific provisions related to some lot types about where they can be applied. But generally, yes, it's you have everything that you could choose from in Lakeside, and T3 kind of grabs the bottom, and T5 kind of grabs near the top, ranging from your single-family large lot house up to an apartment building. So those transects just provide a certain range of building types within each.
So let me get to my question specifically then. What have you done, or what do you have in the plan that makes some sort of a break between a very busy street and going to get worse, and okay, it's going to be a house, it's going to be a business. What is it that's going to break up that look of just a business and a road? I hate to use a city, but State Street in Orem.
Yeah.
How are you? What have you got in the plan so that we don't have that happen?
One element is the street standards or the thoroughfare standards. So let me come to the full plan here. This is the full current. Well, I can go to the if we come down here to the thoroughfare standards. Sorry for the scrolling.
So are these recommendations or are these
No.
requirements?
These are, this is this top street. This is the map that shows you where the Lakeside Arterial Street, which streets are designated as the Lakeside Arterial Street. So 2600 West and 400 South are designated as Lakeside Arterial Streets. That is regulatory. The thoroughfare design standards for those streets are codified and regulatory. This italic section above is explanatory language, but this cross section and this language here tell us what the street will be. So we know that on 4th South, we will have behind the top back of curb, we'll have a 16-foot, if we don't have on-street parking, we'll have a 16-foot park strip, a 6-foot bike path, a 5-foot sidewalk, and then whatever the setback is for the building on its individual lot. Where we do have on-street parking, there would be an 8-foot park strip, and then a 6-foot multi-use path and a 5-foot walk. So we would have at least, at the minimum condition, 19 feet between the top back of curb and the front of the private lot.
So is there going to be shrubbery,
Yes,
bushes,
there will-
trees, flowers,
There must be trees on a certain
frequency?
There must be a certain amount of plantings that are identified through really interesting regulatory mechanism in here called shrub points. You have to have a certain amount of shrub points, and depending on how big the container is, you can get there. You can do more big ones, small, or less big ones, more smaller. And so the design of the park strips, the design of the front setbacks of the houses, all of that is codified in the landscape standards, and will provide a nice, or I think a well-executed minimum standard for the landscaping of the park strip, the sidewalks, the front setbacks of any of those buildings. And I'm comfortable in the standard, knowing that the minimum standard that's codified will produce a good result.
And back to the first question, you're comfortable that the varieties that are stated, the different types that are going to be on a street, have enough variation to it to create not clutter, but to create enough visual effect that's very appealing?
Yes, I do. My biggest concern, and this really raises from the parties from which we've had interest in this area and some of the other areas, is whether the architectural standards the standards that apply to each unit will hold up under the kind of pressure of a production builder. And I'm not 100%, I can't stand in front of you and say that it will be absolutely, every house will be gorgeous and it will be a Mayberry or a Utopia, but that it will be good, and it will be, I think, to most people, very, very nice. I will look around and say, hey, they should have done that column differently, and I don't like the way they did that window. But it's a substantial improvement on the standards we have had in the Westfields.
I understand. And that's what we spent, how many years, Mike?
We've been here for 7,
Yeah,
and
it's
it's been
painful.
almost that whole time.
I'd also indicate, I mean, the code has a lot of language in it, which through that process, we chose to leave on the developer side in terms of recommended language, but not required. And that's, I think, part of the reason Josh is hedging a little bit there. And in this, and Josh went through a bunch of these very quickly, but several boxes were moved from optional to mandatory as in an effort to mitigate some of those concerns with regard to this. Will it be perfect? Probably not, but
Yeah.
that's what happened.
But you know what I'm driving at, so.
Exactly.
Okay. Other questions for Josh?
The developers are here if you care to hear from them as well.
Well, Ed's heard me say this, so that's not a surprise to him. Okay, other questions? Okay,
Are you ready for a motion?
Yeah, what,
Oh yeah, we got to make changes. Should
So
we?
writing it
Should
up.
we go to our meeting and then come back? How long is it gonna take? Okay, all right. Because we have closed session coming too, right?
we do. Yep. Make it legible.
Thank you for accommodating those last minute tweaks.
All right.
Okay, so what we need is a motion with the handwritten notes. Okay, very good.
I motion to approve ordinance number 4-2025, amending the Lakeside Landing Special District overlay.
I'll second.
It's a roll call vote. Logan?
Yes.
Craig?
Yes.
Mindy?
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Jake.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Very good. Okay, no other items on the agenda, but we do need to go into a closed session
For property, Mayor.
for property, sorry.
A motion that we go into a closed session for property, and then we end the meeting from there.
I'll second.
Those in favor say aye.
Roll call.
Oops, roll call. All right, well, thanks for catching me. Craig?
Yes.
Mindy?
Yes.
Jake?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Logan?
Yes.
Okay, very good, thank you.